Big data, we've been talking about that all day, is recent and it is real. In one day, we may have heard this mentioned yesterday, the world now amasses more data than it did in all recorded history prior to this century. So the dimensions here are huge. Big data solutions claim to be able to extract the high quality and commercially useful information from this mammoth mountain of data. Well, can big data deliver on its promises? Are we on the verge of another privacy debate as we filter through all this information? And is big data the next big thing for cyber criminals? All right, we want to talk about all of those things, and we've assembled a panel today to help us sift through the promises and the risks of big data. So if you could help me welcome four gentlemen who are going to lead us through the talk on big data. Gentlemen, if you please could come out now. Mr. Reger, hi, nice to see you. Good to see you. Gentlemen, good to see you again. Hey, how you doing? All right. So we'll do a quick rundown, introduce everyone. At the end there, we've got Joseph Reger, the CTO with Fujitsu Technology Solutions. Correct. And beside him, we've got Raimund, the CTO with Trend Micro, and beside him we've got Daniel Fallmann, the founder and CEO of Mindbreeze Software, and next to me we've got Steffen, the CEO of EXASOL, correct? Correct. All right, let's talk about the promises of big data. And I'll ask all of you maybe to answer this, or just go through the line here. Are we expecting too much from big data right now, or are the expectations in line with the reality? Mr. Weissbarth.
I think we are expecting the right thing. Big data is quite a big opportunity for all of us because there is so much value in that data. And we, as the industry, we have to find some ways to deliver that value to our customers.
Okay. Mr. Fallmann?
Yeah, I think that big data and the applications in the background are able to deliver extreme value today to companies and people out there. Nevertheless, I think it's just a path, it's the beginning of an evolution that's starting right now. I have read a lot of articles around the CeBIT where people compare big data and the shift it can deliver to the information age, like the upcoming of the PC. And I think that's a really important thing. We today don't even know what all the use cases around big data are. Mm-hmm. There are just a few very well-made applications that deliver great value, okay. But what's possible, I think we don't even dream of today what's possible in the future with all this data in the background.
All right, so we're basically just at the tip of the iceberg right now.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Geddes.
We use big data since 2005, big data analytics, and it's extremely useful to protect our customers better, but you shouldn't underestimate how expensive this is. If we see how many servers, how much storage space we need to just process 12 billion requests per day, to store 5 terabytes of new data per day, my developers talk about petabytes all the time, and just to retrieve certain informations utilizes a lot of CPU cycles.
So is the technology not at a point that it can make big data and all these analytics cheaper?
No, I think the technology is there, but you can't. You could bet on Moore's laws that it will get cheaper and cheaper. Yeah. But on the other hand, we are seeing more and more data, and we are processing more and more data. So far, we didn't see a cost benefit because the stuff is getting cheaper because we have to buy more and more.
Okay, Mr. Reger.
Well, I think that we expect too little. We don't even ask the right questions as of yet. Uh-huh. If we are asking the usual questions, we are going to get the usual answers. And the usual answers are, don't need big data, really. So we should expect more and ask unusual questions, do explorations, and be surprised. Then big data is justified.
What is an unexpected question, then? What should we be asking?
No, well, if it's an unexpected question, I can't say it now, because then it would be an expected question, right?
Yeah. But
so, my point is that Big data is different from usual business analytics because it lets you explore the data. With the current technology, with the zillions of servers and the large databases, in-memory databases that expedite fast access, what one can do is sit down without really knowing what the question is going to be that I'm going to ask, and look around and experiment around and explore, and hopefully in that creative process the right idea for the right question comes in with a surprising answer. That was not possible in the past because the runs for a business analytics questions took 2 days or a week or so, and therefore that sort of exploratory search was not possible, and big data changes that picture, and therefore it's going to be useful.
Okay. Are there enough people right now in the business to do this kind of search that Mr. Reger is talking about? Are there enough qualified people to be this, who are this smart? No?
No. We see that at our customers. That is, on the one hand side, is the challenge to work with big data as a technique, but then having the people who can work with that analytical. So we are talking about not only the business analysts right now, we are big data analysts, and we talk to customers, they thinking about founding universities to get people out of the universities to help them in that data exploration journey.
So there aren't enough people studying the right things, yeah?
The reason is easy, I guess, why there are not enough people, and I absolutely agree. There aren't enough people today. But I think the reason is that the whole industry, the shift today that we see with big data, with bringing meaning to information, just as it's just the starting point of what's possible. People didn't invest in education in this part because this part just starts.
So new.
Yeah, it's just new. Mm-hmm. But the great thing is, once you found out what you can do with information and what you can derive of all the information, I think this is a fascinating field. So you see the people, for example, for the IBM Watson project, it's the Deep QA project. The people are at an age that did this project between, I guess, 35 and 55, something around that. And you see that this Watson project, which was really in public, yeah, and in all media, generated a discussion on Facebook, on Twitter, that all the young people are now interested in how can this thing understand language, how can he bring meaning to information, and I think this will be the driver for coming up with educational.
Let me ask people in the audience too, if they can, just by showing your hands, how many people here actually work in big data, work in reading big data? How many do we have in here right now? Is there anyone here who would say their job is directly attached to reading big data? No one. I mean, that's amazing.
Have to define what big data is.
That will be different at the end of the year, though. This year is going to be the year of big data. By the end of the year, if you are not conversational about it and you cannot claim that you have a project in your company, you're going to be not interesting at the parties. So last year it was cloud. Cloud is still important, and in fact, I don't know whether we ever get to that, but it's an implementation platform for big data. However, big data is the big topic this year, so by the end of the year you've got to gear up and everybody will be talking about big data. There will be enough people by that time. It's another matter if we have enough qualified people, because the problem is that the good big data scientist is somebody who understands the business that he would like to investigate. So it has business domain expertise. He also has technology expertise, both in terms of analytics, what kind of algorithms and how, and what kind of systems will be implemented, and also understands the limitations of hardware, because the point in case was made here that we're going to need lots of servers and storage, and certain things will be just barely doable if you do it right with the technology. So these three areas together do not come too often in one person, but we're going to need that kind of people, the so-called big data scientists.
Mr. Reger, new big data tools, do they make analytics much more affordable? I mean, if they do, is this a boom time, or is this good news for example, for nonprofits?
It is, but not because the tools are becoming affordable. The tools are becoming affordable, and that's good. And partly they are becoming affordable because a bunch of them is from the open source domain, not all of them, but a lot of them. I think that the big difference will be made by the wide availability of data in the market. So you can tap into weather data, historical data for any kind, marketing data of any kind. And as we mash together all these different data sources, that is one of the big advantages of big data, that we can do that. You do not rely on a single source and a single stream of data. And oftentimes the surprising new information I talked about comes about because it touches upon so many sources that fit together well, and that is the real value.
Okay. Mr. Giannis, what about the risks of big data?
You could see it as a risk. You also could see it as a benefit. For example, we are not using our internal databases, which of course we need to make available, and for this we have some data analysts. But what I realized is, let's not throw only the data analysts onto this. It's amazing when we bring somebody new into a project, what kind of question he's asking. Sometimes we didn't expect that we even could find an answer based on these questions, but we could. And it's a risk to use the data or misuse the data. So for example, what's in at the moment and very much used by governments, by Department of Defenses, is open source intelligence. Because people reveal an amazing amount of data in the internet, sometimes too much, and this could be used against them. Sometimes it's good to use it against them. Let me give you an example. I don't know if you heard about this BKA Trojaner or ransomware. 2 weeks ago, the Spanish police announced that they got one of the main actors and that they worked with the Dubai authorities to jail this guy. This guy was in Eastern Europe, the gang is in Eastern Europe, and somehow in Russia, somehow there's a protective umbrella around these guys. It's difficult for Western law enforcement to get them. But we at Trend Micro, we had access, which is not allowed out of Germany, but from other countries, to one of the root servers these bad guys are using. And this guy in Dubai was stupid enough. He was on vacation. He made pictures with his iPhone, uploaded these pictures onto his server, and didn't realize that all the access information with geolocation, everything is in the picture as well. So we just told the Spanish authorities, hey, if you still have interest in this guy, he's in Dubai at the moment. And this was working.
That's actually an amazing story. But and you were able to actually apprehend this person because he did something as simple as take a picture.
Absolutely, and with open source intelligence, with getting access to one of the systems and then looking at the EXIF information. So imagine if you do this large scale with big data. You could profile people, which is a risk, but which also could be a benefit, depending on how you use it.
Is big data, could we say that it could be the new haven for cyber criminals? Is this an area that cyber criminals could use, could wreak a lot of damage with?
The more data we store, the more vulnerable we are if somebody's getting the data sets. I'm thinking about, intellectual property, especially Germany here is a prime target because we create a lot of intellectual property every day. Number two, when you store this all, when you rely on the data, what happens if somebody hacks into the database? What happens if somebody just alters a few values, solves some documents, and based on this you make wrong business decisions by being blind and relying on the data? So you definitely could cause some damage or change something.
There is another interesting aspect here. So with the methodologies of big data, with the technical equipment and the new methods for analytics, it is actually possible to break into the systems of a company and do not steal the data. Just run an analysis for it, and with the proper equipment, in some cases that's a matter of minutes, not weeks. So while in the old days you had to steal the data and try to analyze them and massage them, you don't have to do that now. You break in, run on their equipment, your idea, your surprising question that maybe the company didn't have, get the result and disappear in 2 minutes. There's no long data transfer that one could detect and catch the guys because it's so quick.
Well, they haven't really, they haven't really stolen anything.
Well, they have because they have stolen the information that's in the data. Now, I don't know how the legal system deals with that because they are not stealing the data. They are just looking at the data, and that's maybe not permissible in some countries, and therefore it will be very difficult to fight that kind of a crime. It's certainly, we all have the feeling that this is not right, but if the criminals are smarter than the people who own the data, that they can actually steal stuff from companies that the companies do not possess.
Yeah. And is it possible that the companies don't even know that they've been hit?
Oh, yeah.
In Germany, since 2007, it is a crime, but the problem is that, you know, cybercrime is global.
Yeah.
So if you know that it's illegal to do this in Germany, you definitely do this from outside of Germany.
And you say cybercrime is global, but can we talk about geography here? Are there countries where you're going to find more big data criminals?
I would say they're everywhere. You know, at the moment everybody is blaming China based on the recent Mannion report and so on. But actually, when you look at the threat landscape and how the attacks are done, are conducted, actually I'm more concerned about Russia, Eastern Europe, because the guys are more sophisticated. So we see a lot of attacks coming out of China because maybe they are too visible. We see something very sophisticated, including running analytics, coming out of Eastern Europe. And you shouldn't underestimate, for example, our allies, the Americans, for example, because they also do this. We recently just did a honeypot with a water pump control system in a small city in the US and just measured who was attacking it. And it was not just the Chinese. It was the Americans and the British people as well. And the most aggressive attacks we actually saw out of Laos, which we wouldn't have expected.
And where were the honeypots?
The honeypot was in the US simulating a water pumping station of a small city of 8,000 people.
And there were attacks coming from within the United States as well?
Yes, as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about geography for a second, Mr. Fallmann. You were telling me earlier that when we talk about data warehouses, for example, it does matter physically where these warehouses are. I mean, everyone's talking about things being in the cloud, but customers want to know where what the physicality is.
This is exactly what already was mentioned, because it's just we don't have this global laws in place that make sure what happens if I, as a European company, have my data in the US. Which laws do apply? Who has access to this data in which cases? So there is no global law construct that makes sure that this is a in-place working system. So customers that we have, for example, absolutely care that their sensitive data, governments, for example, or financial institutions, that their sensitive data stays, point one, potentially in their own data center with a private cloud solution, or in the cloud, at least in the country where they are, with highest security levels. And that's something that's defined, of course, the security levels of data centers. For example, this goes up to a level 4 in Switzerland, where you really have, in a bunker of the army, you have a very big data center there. And they really care about your data, back up the data, make sure that the data is secure, do audits on a very frequent basis. So there are use cases for it, but I think that the thing that's missing today is really these global rules, this global laws that make sure that I, as an Austrian, know what happens with my data in, for example, in the US at Facebook, at Google. What are they allowed to do with my data?
Well, there are different cultures surrounding data protection, right? There are different cultures, and there's also a generational difference, isn't there?
Absolutely. If you look at the kids and the teens, they are not having these thoughts. We are thinking about data security and data privacy. It's amazing what is stored and what is published in Facebook. So this generation do not share our fears, maybe. But I totally agree. We should have the same a kind of rules that we are all working on. So working with the Bitkom, we have a lot of discussions about data security and data privacy, but we also say to our politicians, we are not working alone in the world, so we have some equal standards if we're thinking about data security, about big data, and it's maybe a competitive disadvantage, then we have to discuss that at least.
Do you gentlemen, I mean, let me paint a very dark picture here. Do you think that we're going to have some type of serious cyber attack with physical fallout, physical damage, loss of life, before we get an international drive to come up with rules that the whole world agrees upon? Is that what, would that have to happen?
I personally doubt that, and it's not directly related to big data. That can happen. That's sort of a question of IT security in general, and warfare will transition to cyberspace. It is actually transitioning now. It's just that we don't know about it that much, but it is already happening now. And that's the normal question of defending states and countries and doing a proper warfare. The big data connection here is that when available data is being used to destroy companies, nations, or what have you, and how you can do that and how to protect against that. It's a big problem and a dilemma, because if we want 100% security and protection against that kind of activity, we will not be able to do big data. It's, once the data is available, it can always be misused by somebody. And given the surprise effect we were talking about, maybe in novel ways that we don't know about yet, we can't even anticipate it. So I'm not a big fan of trying to put together some international scheme and prohibiting everything, because that must be the lowest common denominator. In fact, it will prevent using the data that's out there. So somehow, as mankind or society, we will have to find ways of maybe dealing with the issues that people in their lives, at different stages in their life, they are willing to share other types of information as in some other phase of life or to another extent. I'll give you an example. It is very obvious that with the help of big data type of analysis, one can help the elderly to live a meaningful life, even if they're actually having difficulty to live in their own home. So with the methods of big data, you can help this, what they call assisted living, and they can live in their own home for longer. That saves money for society and gives them a more enjoyable life. So it's very desirable. But obviously for that, they will have to have less privacy, because there will be some kind of a surveillance based on their home and the data that are connected to their lives. And I can imagine that somebody at that stage and at that age is willing to give up a part of privacy for just being able to survive in their own home, while a younger person in his 20s or 30s would never dream of doing that. So I'm an advocate of having contracts for how to use my data, contracts that automatically expire, so that if I don't do anything about it, they will be eradicated after an amount of time. And then I am, as an individual, able to adjust the kind of contracts I'm holding with the publicity, sort of, and adjust that to my needs in that particular phase of life.
And is that realistic, that we can have contracts that when contracts expire, the data that is represented by these contracts will then be deleted forever?
It's very difficult in days of internet where everything is cached in. However, there are technologies around, you know, digital rubber and expiration dates attached to images and files and stuff. There's a lot technology can do if there is desire to implement it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wonder about that. Younger people are willing, obviously, to share lots of data about themselves. And I wonder if in the future, 20 years from now, will we have a generation that will be in a huge state of regret that they disclosed so much.
I don't think so. I recently talked with, that's US, with millennials in US. This is this young generation. A lot of them, you know, very experimental, doing startups. And that's why we talked with them. And actually, one from our age group brought this up. So think about it. Imagine you go into politics later on. In 20 years from now, will you regret your drunken pictures on Facebook? And the reply from all of them was, as we all post this, it doesn't matter anymore because everybody has these kind of pictures. Well, that's what they think about.
I mean, I wonder if that is true, because there are a lot of politicians in power today. And in the 60s, they were doing what everyone was doing in the 60s. But when it comes out today, it can end their careers. Why will that not be any different in the future? And I'm just wondering if big data will make the problem even bigger.
Because it's publicly available for everyone. Then they would be able to throw dirt on, I would say, almost everyone. You might be suspicious if you don't have these pictures on Facebook.
Okay. In other words, you're too clean.
Yes.
I see.
So you cleaned it up somehow.
Opposing view. So big data in that picture, we've been talking about explicit data. A picture on Facebook is explicit data. There is nothing big data-ish about that. So you look at it, and whether you like it or not is a different matter. Big data as a method, as an analytics method, is capable of delivering information that is not stored there. So looking at a couple of pictures, big data is able to tell you that with 90% probability you've been doing those things you were referring to in the 60s. Whatever they might be, I wouldn't know. But that's what big data can do. It can fill in the dots. And you know, all these privacy attempts where companies, partially forced by law, are sanitizing data, removing names and addresses and personal information. With the methods of big data, it takes about, what, 5 seconds to put all them back? Well, it's not because they're stored, because they are very probable.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking about, you know, removing like private information, the practice of redaction. With court records, for example, but all types of private records. Big data and big data analytics, aren't they going to, in the future, mean that redaction actually has no meaning anymore? We can undo the redaction of the past in a second?
That's correct. By and large, that's correct.
Yeah, that's a scary future. All right, any questions from the audience that's here? I know we've got some on Twitter. Does anyone here want to talk about their dirty laundry? This gentleman right here with the white shirt on. Yeah. Can we get a microphone for this gentleman? Or, did you have a question here? Okay, well, here, just go ahead there where you have the microphone. Go ahead.
Okay, I've got the questions for all of us regarding the honeypot. Is it some technical question? Is it prevention or detection system?
This was a honeypot we did regarding industrial control system. It's an active honeypot. It's when you look at these SCADA systems, this control system, a lot of them by accident are published nowadays into the internet. And this is what we simulated. And what we have behind it is actually a real Siemens Symantec system. We have other control systems behind it. We don't have the actual water pumps behind it, but for an attacker, it looks like the actual system, including documents, documentation, and everything. If you want details about this, we will reveal everything 15th of March at the Black Hat Europe.
Okay, thanks for the answer.
Okay. And the gentleman over here with the white shirt.
Sorry for my voice. I lost it just a day back or so. Big data, typically the way I would see is like, we don't need to be paranoid about losing information, because big data is normally about like analyzing over millions and trillions of data, and you don't need to be specific about what is the name of the person and all. You can mask all of it. It is just about trend lines, or what is the new thing that's coming. You don't have to know, hey, this person or something. That's not what it is typically used for. So I was a bit surprised about too much of concerns on like, hey, like, is there going to be data going to be stolen and all? Because you can always mask all this in the data warehouse itself, which will then be pushed to the big data engine.
Okay. Did you?
So I could say, you know, we don't do marketing on the data, we don't do advertisement. Facebook, for example, needs to know the individual, so they definitely don't mask it. They need the links, including your geolocation, everything. Google at the moment is developing some games with geolocation and so on, which are pretty nice, but to do this, you actually have to reveal where you are to score in these games, which is also to track the individual, to give him targeted custom advertisement based on their behavior. We don't need to do this actually to store even their IPs, and to store the background information would actually create too much data for us. So we don't store it. On the other hand, you know, when we get a request from law enforcement, they would love if we store it all. But for us, you know, it's just not beneficial to do it, so we don't need to do it. And for example, if you clever design your data, I fully agree with you, you shouldn't be worried about it. But on the other hand, when I hear about the breach at Evernote and that all the users have to reset the password, if the password was not stored at Evernote, but just the SHA-1, and if it was stored in a clever way, why do the guys need to reset all the passwords? So I have to ask myself if companies don't make it too easy for themselves to store the data, not having separate databases with index pointers and so on, so you don't have a direct access to the personal information.
And I possibly misunderstood your question, but if there was an angle to it, asking whether masking and redacting and limiting information availability in some ways, whether that's maybe one of the paths we could take, I'd like to say that I'm very skeptical about that, because it's just too easy for large companies whose income is based on marketing to entice people into a situation where, even if they blatantly state that in general, I'm not going to store this and I can mask that for you, but if you want value-added services, and these are the things I could do for you if you volunteer the rest of the data also, if you accept it, press the accept button. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people will press the accept button, because we got into a mode of operation where most of us are essentially willing to trade personal data for a simpler life, or assistance in situations in life, and convenience. And if you ever wondered about how is it possible that all these apps on the smartphones are for free, allegedly for free, then I might offer an explanation for you, because if that app needs anything from you, like your access to your database and your position coordinates and things like that, then you are actually paying for it, not in euro or dollar or money, but with your personal data. So there's a trade going on here already. The problem is that there are no rules to that trade, and you don't really know what you contract for when you press the accept button, because you haven't read the 40th page that follows that.
And sometimes, you know, they even don't show you the accept button, like what we did a few weeks ago for Wirtschaftswoche, where we analyzed the top 80 apps used by business. Why does Tagesschau.de app reveals your geolocation? Why does the Sparkasse app do this? Okay, the guys from Sparkasse immediately say, so we could show you the next ATM machine.
Well, that's a good excuse.
Absolutely.
But what about Tagesschau? Why do they need to know where you are?
I don't know. I don't know, but also Sparkasse, you know, now based on this report, they now changed the app. So now at least, you know, you need to state, yes, I'm okay that you're tracking this. Before it was somehow hidden in the basic Android permissions, and the average user doesn't know what he...
But aren't we creating a situation when we talk about asking for permission from the user? If we really take it, you know, another step further and another step further, are we going to cripple traffic online if we're constantly having to give permission for access to our data? I mean, isn't that the beauty of being online now, is that so many things happen without us having to consent?
you need to find the right balance, but I still want to know, what an app is doing. But that's me. A lot of people, I agree with you, just would say, don't even bother.
Yeah.
I don't care. I want this free app no matter what it tracks.
I think Dr. Reger was quite right. He said it's a trade-off. Yeah, there's no thing such a free lunch. So that didn't change over the years, and it will not change with big data.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people think the internet is a big free lunch.
Yeah, but that's educational things, isn't it? It's education that you tell your children what they should do and what they shouldn't do, because they have to think what people then potentially do with their data.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't allow my son to write the location where he lives somewhere at Facebook and post it everywhere. But other things are just for comfort, because I activate geolocation for many apps, like the use case with the ATM. That's a great example. I would do that because I would love to consume the service in this way.
Yeah.
And if I don't, I would love to have the ability to say no. But nevertheless, the trade-off is there, but the benefit is clear there as well.
And you, as a consumer, you are assuming if you let the Sparkasse know your geographical location, Sparkasse is not going to share that data with anyone else.
I think that's the contract topic again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It must be clear what happens with the data. It must be clear what happens in the data in the different country, and it must be clear what happens in the data at this company where I store the data.
Dr. Reger, talking about this contract, there are lots of pitfalls here because we assume, the consumers, we assume a lot, don't we?
Yeah,
I mean, it's dangerous.
We don't read
I'm not saying the
We don't.
contract is simple.
don't read.
I just said the contract would be needed. I didn't say it was simple.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Why I'm
That's a
mad.
follow-up,
Yeah.
I think.
The question? Yeah.
Bonjour. Sorry for my English. My question is, in the field of smart cities project, prospective, which offered prospective scenario, which looks like data world, who should have the responsibility to protect this data?
In smart cities.
In the field of smart cities project, we should have the responsibility to protect all of this data.
Okay. Who wants to answer that one?
So, in many countries, the responsibility is already with the government because most of the data that is being generated by the sensors and the smart meters in the smart city environment is actually subject to a data protection of the telecommunication law. In Germany, you cannot just put your electricity bill or electricity consumption data onto the internet, because that's about the same thing as breaking up somebody's mail. It's protected already by the law. And I think that in the case of the human infrastructure in terms of cities and transport and traffic systems, the society and therefore the government has to assume some responsibility in forms of strict laws and regulations. Because you see, what I do as an individual with my own data, that may be my own problem or concern. However, what happens with the infrastructure of a city, the water reservoirs or the electricity or whatever, that concerns everybody. So therefore, I think we need a strong governmental influence in there.
We've got a couple of questions on Twitter. How can companies use big data if they can't even work with normal data? Yeah. Mr. Weissbarth.
What we're seeing in reality, we heard about petabytes. But we, as a database vendor, we see often companies struggle with the traditional data sets. So we are not talking about polystructured and unstructured data. Sure, we have companies and customers doing the combination out of both systems, Hadoop systems, traditional data warehouses and data analytics. But a lot of customers really struggle with analyzing normal data warehouse information. So it's a kind of the future that we foresee as a company, and we're trying to work on how we can help our customers to make that analytic more smarter. We just heard it's a way of minutes or hours or days to analyze these data. That's true for normal data as of today. We have customers running normal Monday morning reports in more than 10 hours, and you cannot work on that. And that's a normal, that are not data warehouses bigger than 30 terabyte. So we are far away in our normal work life working with petabytes of data. And again, I think we have to find a way to make that kind of analytics more smarter. Because if you run queries against petabytes, just remember, I think a couple of years ago we had the theme at CeBIT, it was Green IT, but thinking about hundreds of servers running queries, what kind of energy consumption that would be. So again, in that way we have to find a way to handle petabytes in a smart way. So, because again, if you set up a query, if it's a Hadoop query or a normal SQL query, it will not come back.
Yeah, Mr. Fallmann, do you want to say something?
Absolutely. I read the question again, and it's really amazing because the point is, today is really the day you should start with dealing with the information that you already have in your company. Because if you have to compete with other companies that have a tool for analyzing all the data and easy accessing the data in place, you will get trouble to compete with those companies in just a few years. Yeah? That's the same thing in the automotive area, for example. Really, they have thousands of companies delivering parts of the car to them. Yeah? And they really have to make sure they get a whole picture of all this data. It's a competitive advantage. Yeah? If you're not able to handle thousands of documents or 100,000 of documents today, you should really start caring about this in your company and discussing this. And this is exactly the point why I love this term big data that much, because several years ago, so 5-10 years ago, everybody was talking about semantic web and enterprise search. And now the people really see that with the growth of information, they have a pain point inside their organization. And the more and the bigger the pain point gets, the more the CIO and CEOs of those organizations need to be able to analyze, to access the information efficiently, not with a 10-hour report, but efficiently explorative, yeah? To stay competitive. Yeah? And that's what I like, because 10 years ago, I told the people that this will be a problem and is a problem. And now people are calling me and telling me they have a problem. Yeah? And that's
so they should have listened to you, 3 years ago. But it definitely is a problem today, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you should be prepared. That's just the point.
And you should invest in it, because somehow you have to see this as an undiscovered gold mine within your organization to be competitive. So we went into big data by accident. We don't sell big data solution. We sell protection to our customers. But to do this, we need to do big data processing, big data analytics. And we started with this in 2005, and it was hard. And it cost us a lot of money. But when I then see somebody at the RSA talking in a keynote that they see requests for 100 million URLs per day, I say, wow, we get 7 billion per day. But you have to start somewhere. And when you figure out how to use this gold mine, you could correlate between all the data sets, and you discover more and more to protect your customers better, in our case, as a user of big data analytics.
Okay.
The question, besides being a bit cynical, which is okay, assumes that companies will actually deal with the big data analysis themselves. And that's not necessarily the case. The value chain is quite likely to break up into pieces where information brokers exist in the market who do the specialized analytics for you, where data repositories exist, some of them for free, but some of them for fee, for money. And so there's data availability, there's analytics capability, there will be infrastructures, and they are already in the cloud that can do a big data type of processing. So in fact, the company doesn't have to do much on his own. It is useful to have ideas how to use the results of big data analysis, but I'm sure there will be consulting companies who even give you ideas for that. So the current assumption that big data is just a continuation of data management and storage and analysis is wrong. Big data is actually not about data. Big data is about the information in the data, and therefore not directly related to data processing.
Okay. We're running out of time, but before we wrap up, Dr. Reger, you had said that maybe people aren't talking about big data a lot now, but this year that will change. So let me ask all of you very briefly to tell us, what will we be talking about a year from now in terms of big data that we're not talking about right now? Dr. Reger, I'll let you start.
I could say this panel was so smart, we talked about all aspects. No, on a serious tone, I will say that I think next year we are going to talk about how big data and cloud will be married.
Okay.
For me, it will be, and it was mentioned already, a shortage of data analysts who know how to ask the right questions. Definitely, this will be one of the hottest jobs on the market in 1 year from now.
All right. Mr. Fallmann?
I think that I love the big data and cloud very much, but I think that one aspect that we will discuss as well is how you can apply all the technologies in place, this tool chain, to use cases that we today wouldn't think of.
Okay, Mr. Weissbarth?
It's good to be the last one on that round because the people already mentioned, I think, the right topics. I think cloud and big data, the data scientist problems, and I think it's a part of our job to help our customers to find that way to lead them.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. That is going to wrap up our panel discussion. It's also going to wrap up today's center stage action. You can feel free to check out the power stage and the open stage. Right now, there are more discussions, including a workshop on creating the next big app. Tomorrow, we're going to be back here to talk about more mobility. We're going to talk about the death of complexity, believe it or not, and we're going to talk about sharing big data. So we're not through with big data yet. Thank you all for your attention. Have a nice remainder of the day. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.